Hey, it's Neil. I am excited to share beer stories, hosted by my good friends Mischa Smith and Alex Violet from Pasteur Street Brewing Company, and produced by me at 7 Million Byte Podcasts. So check out beer stories here on a Vietnam podcast. It's going to be a special PodSwap, and we're going to do more of these over the coming months. There will be new episodes every week. This is for beer enthusiasts, not beer snobs. So if you love beer, you'll love this podcast. The link is in the show notes. Go and follow that if you need it, and enjoy the podcast. Cheers.
Welcome back to Beer Stories, a podcast set here in Saigon, Vietnam, hosted by myself, Mischa Smith, and my co-host,
Alex Violet.
Our producer's Neil Mackay, theme music by Lewis Wright, and our guest today is our producer. Neil, say hello. Hey, thanks for coming on short notice.
You are welcome. This was definitely not an act of desperation at all.
Neil, what's your favorite thing about beer?
The social aspect of it, doing it with people. Not that I don't do it on my own sometimes. We were waiting in line and Adri was looking at all the beers. She loves like IPAs, she loves sours. And then his guy behind, then he's like, you should get this one. It's like the lowest strength, weakest beer.
You want to be like chatting them up, trying to like, hey babe. Sorry, I can't. I'm going to have a bad setup line. Hey babe, what do you know about hops?
I stopped drinking for like about a year and a half, 10 years ago.
Did you have a goal in mind? Like, were you planning on not drinking ever
again? Yeah.
What was it about your life that you decided you didn't want to have any drinks anymore for the rest of your life? Before we get into it, we're going to do our the hottest new running segment in the podcast business. It's called the Hangover Check. So, Neil, how hungover are you this morning?
Right now, I'm okay. When I woke up, I was like death.
Okay. Did you have a heavy night last night?
Well, I did. Yeah, I guess so.
That's the only way you get a hangover.
Yeah, pretty much. I was like, yeah, no. I mean, it's one of these things I look back and I'm like, I didn't feel like I had too many drinks, but yeah, I had.
And then when you're actually thinking about it, you're like, oh, well, there was that, and then the next place, and then
yeah, and came home and had soju before I went to sleep, Ooh. Which is just not necessary, like at all.
Soju was never necessary.
No, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, was hungover, but I recover pretty quickly.
Love it, Alex. How hungover were you this morning?
0.2.
Not a rookie score. Mischa, how hungover were you?
I was not. I had a relatively quiet Friday night because I knew we were recording this morning. I wanted to be responsible and professional. I'm not saying you weren't meant to be on the.
Just collapsed on the.
I'm reforming my ways. Yeah.
I thought you were going to say you weren't hungover because you got smashed by a bike yesterday.
No, that was 2 days ago.
Oh, 2 days ago.
Yeah. No, I'm fine.
There's nothing like knowing you're waking up to sit in the hottest room on the earth for 2 hours to get a good night's sleep and make sure you're not hungover.
Let's just sweat it out. This is the sweat box.
So that's been our new segment. How hungover are you?
I like it.
Great segment, Mischa.
So Neil.
Mischa.
We're just going to dive into it. Neil, what's your favorite thing about beer?
The social aspect of it, like just doing it with people. Not that I don't do it on my own sometimes, but too, it's not very often. I don't really think very often I've ever cracked open a beer by myself. Every now and again, but when I think about it, if I'm drinking beer, it's always with someone.
Does the type of beer matter?
Fortunately not, no. As long as it's beer.
So it's just the experience. The experience of drinking beer is more important than the beer itself.
Yeah. So, I don't know if you guys know this, I stopped drinking for like about a year and a half, about 10 years ago, maybe a bit more than 10 years ago. And the first drink I had when I started to drink again was a Cooper's Green Ale. And I was in the outback in Western Australia, travelling down the west coast. About 1 million degrees, so hot. And my friends had a crate of beer, and I just sat there and I was like, I really want a beer with you guys,
You said it was a year and a half?
Year and a half.
And did you have a goal in mind? Like, were you planning on not drinking ever
again? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was a big decision to then start drinking again.
And it was so hot in the outback that you just wanted to
that's
crash.
what drove me to it. It was just so ridiculously hot. I mean, now living in Saigon, I'm probably acclimatized to the heat, but first time in that kind of heat, didn't matter what you drank, water, juice, anything. Like, you're just so thirsty all the time. And the guys I was with had a crate of beer, and I was like, could really go a beer right now. So eventually had one, and then that was it.
I'm really curious about this. So yeah, I've had some friends who have chosen the path of sobriety for various reasons. So what was it about your life that you decided you didn't want to have any drinks anymore for the rest of your life?
I was doing stupid things. So I was living in America at the time, and I remember the final straw was that I just woke up and I didn't remember what had happened, like blackout drunk. And I just didn't enjoy that feeling of waking up and not remembering like how I got to bed, not remembering what I did, thinking, did I do something stupid? So like I wasn't like a good drunk. And then, yeah, I was like, I'm just going to give this up.
Yeah, I remember when I was younger being more of an angry drunk. I like to think I'm usually a pretty happy one now, although, there are occasions. But I think part of that's just about maturity. When you're young and you're drinking too much, you're just not mature enough to handle it.
Yeah, no, I was doing stupid things and didn't want to have that feeling waking up every morning. And so I was like, right, I'm just going to give it up. And then I luckily, I mean, to be honest, I think it was 15 months I went without a drop, but I was living in Rhode Island in a summer camp, during the year, like during the winter. So there was like nobody there, 64 acres, me and one other person. I didn't have a lot of temptation. There wasn't much like, come and have a beer. So that helped.
So the longest I've ever gone without drinking was 5 months, and I broke my fast with a bottle of champagne, and I was feeling it after like 2 sips. So that first beer you had after a year and a half, did it get on top of you?
I can't specifically remember, but yeah, I do. But like you're talking about the maturity, like after that, and even now to this day, I was just much a more mature drinker. Like I remember to the point where I would measure out my whiskeys, and I would, when I was at home and I had a whiskey with friends, and then even going out, I wouldn't really ever get blackout drunk again. I was just after that, I felt like a mature drinker. Like I can go out and then handle having drinks without having to get belligerently drunk. But I still got belligerently drunk sometimes.
So when your drinking shifted from something that maybe you weren't happy with into a way that you feel like it fits into your life, at that point, did your choice in what you wanted to drink change as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think I became a more discerning drinker because I'd matured and I was not wanting to drink to get blackout drunk. So like, yeah, exactly. I was thinking about like the whiskey I would drink. I started drinking gin and tonics for the first time and nice beer as well. That's when I think the craft boom was starting back then. So we're talking back like 2007, this was. So I definitely became more of a discerning drinker.
Yeah, I mean, people drink for different reasons, obviously. I think enjoying your drinks is more important to you as you get older. When you're young, it's just shot, shot, shot. You're a little bit younger than me, yeah? I'll
be 40 on Monday. 2 days.
Oh, yeah, so only 1 year younger than me. So I remember, not like the moment, but I remember a time in my life when craft beer was not a phrase that I was familiar with. Do you remember like learning about craft beer and learning about that beers can be different and artisanal at some point in your life?
Yeah, I think first, I don't know for you, first it was Belgian beers. That was the big thing in Glasgow and then even around the world. It was like the Belgian Beer Cafe. That was like the big place to go and get a different type of beer. And then I lived in Rhode Island and there was this amazing local bar in a little town called Wakefield called the Muse Tavern. It was like an old horse barn or something that had been converted and they had like a massive range of, I don't even know if they were called craft beers back then, but they had a massive range of craft beers. So like Blue Moon was the big one. We used to love drinking Blue Moon. But I mean, when we're hanging out, we'd easily get a crate of Coors Light or whatnot. Like that's what you're going to drink when you're Miller Lite or whatever light beer it is that you're going to crush at a house party. But when we would go to the Muse Tavern, it was always like Sam Adams as well was like pretty new. And I mean, there's a big debate, right, whether Sam Adams is craft beer. I think I've read something about that before, but Sam Adams was good. But I think that was a transition. I don't remember the first time of being like craft beer, but I remember it was like Belgian Beer Cafe.
We'll be right back.
Join pilot and adventurer Fernando Pino as he takes you on journeys to discover exciting destinations across the UK and Europe. You'll fly with him to hidden gems and experience local culture, from bustling streets to serene hideaways and the best places to eat, sleep, and play. Travel Plans is more than a podcast. It's your ticket to exploring the world and its history with a friend. In this episode, we are flying to discover a beachside paradise perfect for the whole family. Discover golden sands, activities galore, and even free childcare so you get your own break too. Why am I still here?
So when you're talking about the Belgian beer cafe, it sounds like kind of a different experience. Like you're thinking about the beer. Did that bleed into the conversations that you'd have with your friends when you went there? Would you find yourself talking about the beers you were drinking more often than if you were somewhere else with just a Coors Light?
I'm feeling like I'm just going to disappoint you and break your heart now. We were super basic. We were just enjoying the beer. Like, we didn't really talk about it. I think the only flavour I ever remember discussing was like orange peel, because we'd get like a big Hoegaarden and it had like a coriander and orange flavour. But I don't think it ever got any further than that. Yeah, so for me, like, and I remember saying this to Mischa a long, long time ago, I'm not, what do I describe myself? A beer enthusiast, but not a beer snob or a beer geek or something like that. Like, I don't know how it's made. I don't really understand how to describe the flavours. I just really like the flavour.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, everybody's opinion is valid when it comes to beer. Everyone has their own taste, whether you're someone who's brewed many beers or someone who's never brewed a single beer in your life. You're always comparing whatever you're drinking to all the beers you've drunk before. And yeah, I as a sales guy and also a beer enthusiast, I find the whole like gatekeeping snobbery that some people bring to craft beer just really annoying. Just enjoy your beer.
I do remember this transition though of going from just lager. Like, so in Scotland, right, we have Tennent's lager.
Tennent's.
Which is garbage.
Better than Tennent's.
But some people still love it. It's one of these beers, like anything on draft, it's actually quite enjoyable. A cold draft Tennent's is not that bad. A can of Tennent's is disgusting. And I do remember one hot summer day in Scotland, which must have been like one of the 1 days a year. We had warm Tennent's, so we thought, let's put ice in it. And it was just absolutely disgusting, like undrinkable.
It's like training for living in Saigon.
Yeah, and now I think ahead where I'm like, yeah, please, ice. Can I get Lida? Yeah, like now it's like I request ice in my beer. It's such a change. But I remember, so I got to Adelaide, starting to get really I'd gotten into Little Creatures in Perth, which was just like the best. Like, I don't know, you guys had Little Creatures, right?
Yeah.
Now it's been bought over by Corinne, isn't it? It's not the same as what it was when I was there, 2006. It was unbelievable, like just so good. So starting to get into Little Creatures, then moved to Adelaide where they brew Coopers, and Coopers was everywhere. Like every bar you went into in Adelaide had Coopers on draft, which wasn't very usual in Australia, having it on draft. And I remember having actually my birthday. I don't know which birthday it was. It would have been 24, 25, 26, I think. I had a house party and someone got me a 6-pack of beer, but like 6 different beers. So it was like 3 different Coopers, a Hoegaarden, a black ale. I can't remember, 6 different ones, right? And then there was a bunch of girls there, and one of these girls, she didn't really understand it, like why they were all different.
Okay.
And I just always remember this. I tried to explain it to her and I lined them all up from like light to dark. And I was like, just think of it like, they're all beer, like it's all wine, but you have like red wine and you have white wine and rosé, like just think of it like that. And she looked at me and she went, but I don't like wine.
She missed the point.
Yeah.
Happens.
I picked up like on twice you mentioned that the beer on draft was better. Whether it was like the Tennent's or it was rare to see the Coopers, and when you found the draft beer, that made it special, right? Have you ever poured your own draft beer before?
I've worked in bars, yeah. I poured beer.
Do you remember the first time that you poured your own beer?
Oh, that's a good one. I'm trying to think of the first bar I worked in. I can't specifically remember the first time I pulled a beer. I remember pouring a Guinness at the Guinness factory though, in Ireland. That was cool.
St. James Gate.
Yeah, St. James Gate. That was a cool experience. Got my certificate and everything.
That was a great experience. I still remember pouring my first beer and being a brewer. Like, that is one of the moments. Like, I remember oh, wow, I get to use the tap now. This is amazing. Yeah, because I had never been a bartender. I'd been, on the brewing side and poured a beer out of my kegerator at home, and that's one thing. But then, like, I walked behind the bar at the brew pub to, like, test the quality and, like, pulled the tap handle, and I was like, I've actually never done this before. This is pretty cool.
It's a really cool experience. It is, yeah. I mean, even, so we had the 7 Million Bikes birthday party recently, and you guys provided a keg, and then we had the keg set up, and then the staff didn't know how to pour a beer. They'd never poured a beer. So I had to show them, and I actually got behind the bar and was pouring some beers, and it was like, yeah, it's a really cool thing to pour a beer, to show someone else how to do it, to drink it, for sure.
Yeah, for me, definitely, like my start in F&B was always busboy and then serving. So I always really respected the sanctity of like being the bartender, being behind the bar. Like it was a big difference for me. And just like for customers, I noticed like they're distrustful of servers because they're coming over. But the bartender, they're like, they respect the shit out of the bartender. Like, that guy, he must know what he's talking about. he's the big man behind the bar, or, big lady. So yeah,
especially in North America, I think.
Yeah, 100%. I remember when I was in school and I'd been working in restaurants for a while, university, not high school. But no, I had some friends who, like, they were always broke, and I always had money because I was making good tips, working on the weekends. And they're like, oh, if I need money, I'll just get a bartending job somewhere. And I'm like, they don't just give those out. Like, you can't just, you've never worked in a bar before and you think you're just going to get a bartending job? Like, anyway.
It's a lot of work. It is a lot of work. And it's one of these jobs as well, like any food and beverage job, most of the work is not done when people are in the bar, right? It's like the setup, getting the bar stocked, it's the cleanup afterwards. Like, it looks fun when you like see someone behind the bar pulling pints, making drinks, chatting with people, but like, that's only for a few hours. The rest of it is busting your ass.
Right. So yeah, I remember one time here in Saigon, I'm not going to say who it was, but we were at a bar. It was a friend of mine visiting from out of town, and the bartender was busy, but like he was visibly flustered, like just. And my friend was like, "Oh, he's a really good bartender," and I'm like, "No, he's a bad bartender, because if I was doing that, I'd be doing it faster, and I wouldn't be flustered and like." He makes it look hard. I would be able to make it look easy. That's just because I have more experience behind the bar. But
that works though. I remember one time at a brew pub back in the United States, we had like the kitchen was crashing. Right, it was just the food was not coming out. They were just way backed up. And I remember just talking to the servers and the bartenders. I'm like, just look really stressed out. And it works. Like all of the customers were like, oh, they're working. Like they seem really stressed out. They're trying their best to get the food out on time, and it's subtle, but that works. Like,
it's definitely a tactic I used to use sometimes really? Back in the day. Yeah, if you just look really annoyed while you're walking through your section, they're like, "Oh, I don't want to bother him. He looks like he's got a lot on his mind."
One of the things being a bartender in the UK, I don't know if there's so much in America, but in Scotland especially, is you have to make sure that the beer you serve is filled to the top of the glass. If it is not filled to the top, they're going to hand it back. And it's almost the same thing every time. Ask for a pint, please.
Right.
And then you've got to make sure you top it up.
I would say in the US, if you return your pint to the bartender and say it's not full enough, you're probably going to be waiting 20 minutes for your next beer.
Totally different then. Yeah, I mean, in the UK, you're like, oh, so I'm so sorry. And you immediately top it up.
Yeah, I've had Australian customers come up here in Saigon and complain if there's a reasonable amount ahead, they want it like you're saying, to the tippy top of the glass.
Yeah.
All right, bud.
I think they probably learned it from us.
Sorry, I just want to get that on record. Neil just said that Australians do things that they've learned from Europeans. British, okay. Yeah. They don't have a culture of their own.
No.
Please send your complaints to Neil at 7millionpipes.com.
Yeah, no worries, I'll take them. No, yeah, so craft beer is just, once I got exposed to it though, yeah, I could say it's been like a love affair. When I actually think about it, like everywhere I go, it's literally like, where are we going to get craft beer? Like we just went to Thailand for the first time in 3 years. We left Vietnam. One of the first things we do is like look up the craft beer bars. Where are we going to go and drink? Where's a different place that we're going to drink different beer?
Yeah, I love hearing stories like that. Obviously, like, before COVID, a lot of tourists came. They would search craft beer Vietnam, and then they would just find our taproom and come in. And then, like, obviously it's easier now. There's a lot more options. But I remember back in the day when we were first starting, it was only a few other places that we could recommend to go to after they came to our taproom. So it's awesome now with all the beer crafts, all the other breweries. that there's so many great options for craft beer in Vietnam.
Well, that was my story. You remember I came to Vietnam 2015 on a holiday, and I went to Pasteur Street. There was only one at the time, the original Taproom. And yeah, of course, that's the first thing we did when we got here. Well, the first thing we did was have a ba. Gotta have a cultural experience. But yeah, first craft beer, and like you said, probably the only craft beer at the time.
Yeah, when I travel, I not only enjoy going to craft breweries to try the different beers, obviously, but it's almost like a 99% success rate that like the people that work there are going to be cool and give you an introduction to where you are, and that the other guests there are going to be cool and want to share a story or an experience with you. And that's a great way to travel, I think. Like, it's like a safe bet when you go somewhere, find a craft brewery, and you know that it will be some level of a positive experience.
That is true. Yeah, no, it's definitely like a craft beer bar. And like I mentioned, Little Creatures, I mean, and we've kind of talked about this before. Drinking craft beer, or even what I'm saying about a social event, it's like an experience. So like I would love to go back to Perth, and anytime I went back to Perth, it was just, that was like in my head, like we're going to Little Creatures, we're going to get the spicy mussels, we're going to sit out the back at sunset, we're going to drink Little Creatures IPA. Oh, they've got a new IPA, like, and just, it's an experience.
Sure. So I did want to ask about that. You said they got acquired and then the beer wasn't as good anymore.
Not as good at all. It's terrible.
Are you sure?
I'm sure. I'm 100% sure.
Are you sure it's just not that the beer didn't live up to your nostalgia for the beer?
I'm 100% sure. It got bigger, and I remember we were in Sydney and we got a bottle of Little Creatures. I was so excited. I was like, Little Creatures in a bottle. Now again, bottle's different to tap.
And maybe you just got it done.
Maybe, but no. But then we went back to the brewery like a little while after and had a beer, and it was just, it wasn't, and I do remember the flavors. It just wasn't as floral. It wasn't as pungent. Like it was specifically, I was like, this does not taste as good as it used to taste. And I was like, I mean, that's what happens when it went from like a small, independent, one-off brewery to a mass-produced, owned by a massive corporation.
So it's really funny. I have the totally opposite experience.
Okay.
It's very specific, but the brew pub I worked at in Toronto was Mill Street Brewery. I was there the first summer that they were open as a pub. And then after I moved to Vietnam, I was sitting at our taproom one day and I was just scrolling through Facebook and I saw that Mill Street announced that they'd been acquired by Labatt, which is the massive Canadian. And it was just 1,000 comments. Fuck you guys. You sold out. I'm never drinking your beer again, blah, blah, blah. And about a year later, I was back in Toronto for the first time. I had a layover at the airport and I found a Mill Street Brewery pub in the airport. Like, from where it started, I was like, this is amazing. And I tried some of the beers that I had remembered, some of my old favorites. And when I worked there, like, there were 13 beers and like 4 of them were really good. And then the rest were kind of okay. So I tried some of the old beers that I had and they tasted just as good. And I tried some of the new beers and they were awesome as well. So I was like, they did it the right way. They got an investment and they put it back into the company and worked on developing new beers, new recipes, new labels, all that. And it's the beers got better. Not
that's
worse.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it can happen, obviously. My experience with this one, I was very disappointed.
Fair. Life's all about disappointment.
Tainted the brand for me. But before that, it was just that. It was like, had such a special place in my heart. Like, and then you've made me really think about how much craft beer has had a big place in my life, because everywhere I go, it's a craft beer bar, get friendly with the brewers or the people that make it. And when we were in New Zealand, massive kind of part of the beer community. They've just had another beer vana there, and we used to go there every year. They have it in the stadium, so they've got a massive, it's called the cake tin is the nickname, because it literally is just a big circular cake tin. And
funny in New Zealand.
Maybe. And,
it sounds better in Kiwi.
Yeah, it's a cake tin. If you want to, anyway. But yeah, so it's all the craft breweries go there. We even volunteered one year working at Keraroo Brewing, which had an amazing coconut porter. And it's just thousands of people over 3 days just getting absolutely smashed on craft beer.
No, it's amazing. Like you go anywhere in the world and you can walk into a craft brewery and that it's going to be accepting on some level. And you're going to have a good time while you're there. Like you can share a story. They'll be open. They'll be a friend. Like it's really, I think, great for building a community. It's like the community pub, where you go in and you're all there to talk about beer and be friendly. And it's a great way to like travel or visit or just get engaged with your community.
The name of the podcast, right, is Beer Stories. And now, as we're talking, I'm just one after the other in my head. I'm just remembering, like, I have so many beer stories. Like, is that good or bad? It's such a big part of my life. But I'm thinking, like, even in New Zealand, I played with a football team, and it was a pub team sponsored by a craft brewery called Sprig and Fern. And they had one in Nelson. We were in Wellington, so cross Tasman. And we'd go over once a year and play a friendly against the other pub team, go to the brewery or the tap room, share beers, and just such a great experience.
For our North American listeners, a friendly is a soccer match.
Exhibition match, you guys would call it.
There you go.
North America, a friendly, a meaningless game. Exhibition match in semi-finals.
So, Alex, you said something interesting before, and I want to just get back to it. You said when you go into a craft brewery or brew pub in a new country, 99% of the time you're going to have this awesome, welcoming, friendly experience. I want to talk about the 1%.
The 1% that we should not name names, but we can talk about it. And that 1% is when you walk in, and there's a lot of there's definitions on what is craft beer, and there's like metrics for different things, how big you are, or what ingredients you use. But that 1% is when you walk in and you just know it. You know that this isn't here because somebody's happy about making the beer and trying to build an experience. You see, this is somebody's paycheck. This was just like it was either a laundromat or a brew pub to put in the corner of this building, and they chose brew pub, and you can just see it on people's faces, and it's unfortunate, you hate seeing that sort of thing, but it is 1%. It's very rare that you have an experience like that.
Absolutely. For me, I mentioned it before, like the gatekeeping and the snobbery that some people in the industry have is a real turnoff. And if you're at a place just when people are arrogant, instead, like there's a difference between being proud of what you're doing, which I think we all are, and being really arrogant about it. Like, hey, man, I love your beers. Like, yeah, of course. Like, why would you? Instead of thank you, just, yeah. Come on, man.
There's also, what do you guys think? There's a little bit of sexism as well, I feel, in craft beer. And I'll give an example, and then you can
open that can of worms.
Disagree. Well, Joe, I'm just thinking again back to New Zealand. We were at this beer festival in a big field. It's like literally, I'm not even kidding. It was our favorite day of the year. Like we couldn't wait. You'd go up over the Rimatuck as a big mountain, just beer in a field for a day, right? And we were waiting in line, and Adri was looking at all the beers on the menu. She loves like IPAs. She loves sours. And then his guy behind, what was the beer he suggested? I can't even remember. He's like kind of tapped in. He's like, you should get this one. And it was just like the lowest strength, weakest beer. And she was like, I think I'll get the double IPA. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I'm drinking our passion fruit wheat right now, and I still hear it around the country and around Saigon a lot. I was like, oh, that'll be good for the ladies, right? I'm like, it's just a light, refreshing, awesome tasting beer. We don't make beers for women or men. We just make awesome beers that anyone can enjoy anytime.
She even got it recently. We were somewhere, I can't remember, the guy was at the menu and he's like, oh, this one's for ladies. I've seen it on the menu here as well. They actually have a section for ladies.
Stop. Where?
But yeah, I've absolutely seen that, like says for ladies and then lists a bunch of like.
So the only time we've ever done something like that is just to have fun with it for like Valentine's Day. Well, like every lady gets a free ladies beer. It's the 13% chocolate stout because ladies love chocolate.
It's good to have fun with it.
Turn it on its head a little bit. But for sure, I mean, obviously there's sexism in the craft beer industry. There's sexism in life. Like it's not particular to the industry. And I think a lot of people are doing a lot of work to make it better. Just on a note, like the head brewer at Turtle Lake up in Hanoi, she's a Vietnamese lady. Thomas's head brewer at Fur Brew, she's a Vietnamese lady. Our head brewer under Alex, she's a Vietnamese lady. Like there are a lot of Vietnamese ladies getting into craft beer and making really good beers. Obviously, we're very proud of ours. Turtle Lake right now, I think, is making the most interesting beers up in Hanoi. They're doing a great job. So, like anything else, it's just giving people opportunities and then having talented people take those opportunities. And right now, a lot of young Vietnamese brewers are women, which is great.
And that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I've heard about things like this as well. And I know even in previous breweries I've mentioned lots of females involved. But I'm also meaning more like the customers are kind of like, you're talking about that snobbery.
Yeah. I think I see a connection for me at least with what you guys are talking about. And if you get too many guys in the same place, it's going to turn into a snob, sort of beer bar. Like there's not conversations going on about like life and dynamics. And I like this beer and this is how it relates to me. It's like, you don't smell that hop. wait, you can't smell that? I can smell that. And I can tell exactly what variety that is. I can't believe you don't know
You only made a 10% beer? I made a 14.5% beer.
I can't believe they didn't even know that the style guidelines dictate that it should be at least 8% for this style. Like, psh. You know, like, I think that happens when you get, like, you're nerdy about it, but then you get nerdy and there's just a whole bunch of guys and, like, you have nothing else to do. And they're just like, well, let's just pick this beer apart for no other reason. And yeah, like in Vietnam, like, you know, like any other place, there's like a mix of like guys and girls drinking. And I think it's really cool to see, like, at our tap rooms, I'm sure a lot of other places, like, we have more female guests than male. And you'll see a lot of tables of just like eight girls going out. And you're just thinking, like, why is that happening? And it's like, well, it's kind of a safe place. If you go to a craft brewery, you're not signing yourself up to be hit on like 15 times per hour and have your, you know, like you can have your space. You can sit there and enjoy an experience. And it's the culture of the atmosphere, I guess, like the whole vibe is that it's just not appropriate to go up and just like interject, you know. But if you sit at a taller table or you sit at the bar, then you're kind of like signaling, hey, come talk to me. But if you're you can sit at a table, enjoy the experience, and then have your space. And that's probably a cool experience. Like, if other places to drink beer, like, you don't get to have space.
No, I've never really thought about that. Now I'm thinking in my head, like, it would be so weird to see a guy go up and talk to a random female in a craft beer bar. Like, it would just be so out of place. You'd be like, what are you doing now? Just go sit with your group. But like another bar, that would be totally normal to like commingle and talk to other people. And
but if they're at the bar, it's okay. Like, there's like this code. Like, if you're sitting at the bar, you want a conversation. If you're at a table with a group, like, you're having an experience with your table, and that's generally respected with the guests that come in for the most part.
I feel like I agree with you 100%, but I feel like there's also just a different quality to the kind of conversation you would have if you were like leaning over and talking to the girls the next day, because you would talk about the beer. You wouldn't be like chatting them up, trying to like, hey babe, sorry, I can't. I'm going to have a bad chat up line. Hey babe, what do you know about hops? But no, definitely, like, you would just strike up a conversation about the beers that I'm drinking or you're drinking or whatever. It would be a more natural conversation and not like this kind of forced, like, you come here often?
I don't have pickup lines, but I still think that would probably be the only one I would have. I wouldn't know what else to say.
Right.
Do you come here often? I'd be like, that's all I got.
Well, you guys are both married, so you haven't had to try any chat up lines
Even
in a while.
before then, I don't think I ever used chat up lines, and if I did, I was probably like, hey, come here often? But I don't know what else do you say.
Well, that's why I like hanging out at our tap rooms, because I've got a built-in, do you know who I am?
do you not
I'm
just,
joking. I would
do
never
you
say
not
that.
just sit with like a picture of you behind you, I think?
Hey, see my picture on the wall?
They just wait till they say, is that you? That's you? Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's me.
He just pulls out a printed sheet of paper. Have you read my expose? Kind of a big deal.
It was funny, actually. Just last night, I was out at a place, and this couple, foreign guy and a Vietnamese girl, came up, and he's like, yeah, my girlfriend said that you're the founder of Pasteur Street, and she was too nervous to come say hi, so I'm just showing her how easy it is to say hi. I was like, yeah, hey, I'm not the founder. You know, I started whatever. And he's just like, oh, that's cool. Yeah. I don't really like craft beers. All right.
Great talk.
Yes.
Where do you go with that?
And then, so she was drinking the same beer I was. It was a double IPA from our friends at Mekong Brewing Company.
That's a good one. The Rhino.
Yeah, the albino rhino. And I'm like, oh, this, because he was saying something about the selection. And I was like, oh, we're drinking the same, me and your lady. Like, it's a good one. He takes one sip. He's like, yeah, it's not good. Yeah, no, he's like, oh, but I'm Belgian, so.
So that's like gatekeepery, right? Like,
Yeah, 100%,
I'm Belgian, so I'm a gatekeeper of good beer.
Yeah. No, just saying where you're from and assuming that gives you credentials is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
So there's a tattoo festival later today, and need to like select the tattoos that we're going to get. If you're getting a beer tattoo, you have to get a tattoo, and it has to be beer themed. What is it?
See, I'm really unimaginative. The first thing that comes to mind is just a frothy pint of beer. Is that imaginative enough?
I mean,
it's pretty boring.
I'm not here to judge your imagination.
I'm not good. Yeah, you go. I'm not good with things like that.
I think that's a pretty standard, like, and there's nothing wrong with it. That kid Hugh that used to work for us, he had that, but he also had like a tap handle. Which I thought was pretty cool. Yeah, I don't have a beer tattoo yet.
So it's not a can or a bottle. It's solidly draft. It's a pint or a tap.
Alex is always thinking on a different level than the rest of us. But yes, no, 100%. Yeah, it would be a draft glass mug of beer. Yeah.
I mean, there is nothing better than a draft beer. Bottles and cans just don't do it. It's a totally different experience.
You're right. The experience is different, but obviously every brewer in the world is trying to make the can and the bottle taste as similar to the draft as possible. And for some beers, it's actually quite easy. For some others, it doesn't translate as well. But I think what you're describing is definitely the experience of drinking, the occasion of drinking, not necessarily the taste. Because I think this beer tastes the same in a can or a bottle or on tap. But also I would enjoy it more fresh from the tap because of the experience of like sitting up at the bar, elbows on the bar, good music in the background, everybody around talking, enjoying themselves.
So referencing the taste, I had, probably one of my favorite beers of Pasteur Street is the Pomelo IPA. And I had that recently in a bottle and I couldn't even drink it. It was so sweet. It was like a different beer. I was like, oh, this is not the Pomelo IPA that I love. So that shocked me. Like that was one of the most stark differences I've ever had between a draft and a bottle.
I mean, that's interesting because I think that beer is incredibly consistent.
Really?
Across,
it might have been
across
a
package types.
Different beer. But I think because it...
Did you leave it out in the sun for too long?
No, I just got a fresh from Pasteur Street at Outcast. I think it makes a difference because, it's got the neck is like a narrow, really changes the flavor versus like a big pint. No? You're looking at me like I'm crazy?
I love this. Like you have all of these reasons. You're like, it must be because of the neck. That's why it tastes different. And as a brewer, like I got, like almost like exhausted at one point, like doing like, hey, I'm going to give you a blind taste test and here's the bottle, here's the can, here's the draft. And yeah, nobody can tell the difference. But they're like, no, but they are different. And I just got like kind of exhausted at one point, like going through this exercise over and over and just said, why am I pushing against this? They are different. The experience is part of drinking the beer. When you see it being poured, when you see it coming to the table, that sets your expectation for how it's going to taste. And why discount that from the experience of drinking a beer? It's as much there as like the type of hop that you use. So after, like talking about like, no, they actually taste the same, or we use the same process, or if I give you a blind taste test, you couldn't tell the difference. Nobody does a blind drinking at their house. Like, I'm going to go to the store and like, close my eyes and just pick up a random beer and then take it home and not look at it and then just enjoy it. No, like the seeing it and setting your expectation is as much a part of it. And I think that a lot of times that goes back to draft beer. And there's this sense of fresh and the sense of it made in front of you, almost like when a mixologist, like whips up this cocktail and you're like, this is made just for me. It's like they pull the tap and pour the beer and it's just for you. For me, that's as much as part of the beer flavor as the actual ingredients.
So if you have a can or a bottle of beer and then you pour it into a glass, drinking it direct from the can tastes different to drinking it from the glass. Surely the vessel it comes in affects the taste.
Yeah, I mean, like it has to intuitively make sense at some point. That if you drink something where you put your whole like mouth and nose into a cup smelling the beverage, and then the other one, you put your nose against like a piece of aluminum and smell that while you're drinking something out of a can, like there's a different experience. It's probably the same for Coca-Cola or the same for anything that you would drink out of a can versus getting, out of a fountain. But it's not that the beer tastes different. It's the experience or the vessel is different. I think so. I don't think there's a need to agree or disagree. I was just kind of...
I'm just thinking, so the physical beer is the same. So I'm not saying that the beer is different, I guess. So I'm agreeing with you. Yeah, but the experience is different. Like the flavor is different from drinking out a bottle to drinking out of...
Yeah, I think
pouring that bottle into a glass or drinking it in a draft.
What I'm saying is that the experience is as much a part of the flavor as the hops or the barley that you put into the beer.
No, I mean, for sure. Like if you're drinking a beer straight from a bottle, you're going to be able to have that sensation of a glass bottle. And if you're drinking a beer straight from a can, like Alex said, your nose is right up against the aluminum, like same, like food, drinks, everything. Like you smell it. There's also, we used to talk about like tasting with your eyes. You know, like when you see it come out, like it changes. All of our senses are in harmony.
Things, the studies I've read with like the coffee tastes different depending on the color of the cup that it's served in. And I don't know if you've seen things like if you eat seafood and you have headphones on, I've seen it. There's an experiment on that, and they play like the sound of waves in your ears. The food tastes saltier.
Tastes fresher.
Saltier. Yeah. So like the sensory experience completely changes what you taste.
And I think with food, like you generally accept that the coffee doesn't actually taste different. It's your perception of the cup. You're not thinking that the bean was different in this one. But with beer, you're like, the beer is different.
That's a good point.
So those are the only kinds he makes.
For me, that's very interesting to think about, is that with like something that's more common, like you have coffee every day, it's mass consumption, it's all of the different levels of quality are clearly defined, the different types of service styles are clearly defined, the price point is very competitive in a lot of ways, and you value the experience a lot of times. But then with beers, you're like, no, it must be just the beer quality. The experience doesn't, it's almost easier to discount it in some way. I can't put my finger on exactly what that is, but it seems like it's there at some level. There's always a lot of conversations that this beer tastes different than the last batch, or the bottle is better than the can, or the can is better than the bottle, or draft beer is the only way.
The only time that applies is if you've previously brewed durian beer in the keg.
Yeah. Not a great experience.
Are we going to talk about the durian beer on every episode?
I think that needs to be a reoccurring theme. Makes me laugh so much.
We just do fact or fiction at the end. So fact or fiction, Neil Mackay, you once were part owner of a brewery.
That's fact.
You want to talk about that just a little bit?
Just a little bit, yeah. Crowdfunding had just started in New Zealand, and the first ever crowdfunding offer was for a craft brewery called Renaissance, depends how you pronounce it.
Renaissance.
Yeah.
You fancy motherfucker.
I think it's Renaissance.
Well, because you're from North America, we say Renaissance, and my wife's not American, and we disagree on how that's said all the time. But anyway, regardless of how you say it, we lost our money. We went to the investor meeting. They were like, Kickstarter, crowdfunding. And the Kickstarter for us was if you invested over $2,000, you got a free crate of beer every year for life. So we were like, yeah, let's do it. So we did 2,000 New Zealand dollars, and about 18 months later, it wound up, and we lost our investment, and we actually left New Zealand after the first year of getting a free crate. So there was 2 more years, I think, after that. We just had to give that away. So we invested $2,000 for 1 crate of beer, basically.
Not your best investment.
Never again. Oh, there's been worse, but we won't talk about that.
Okay.
Was the beer good?
It was really good, yeah. It was really good. Well, the kicker was that they sold all the IP and then just reopened again under the same name, making the same beers with the same staff. All the investors lost out.
This sounds like the 1%.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. Well,
sorry about that. Okay, so fact or fiction. Let's see. Craft beer has different ingredients than mainstream beer, and that's what makes them different.
Oh, fiction, it's the same basis, right?
I think so.
Speak confidently, Neil. You are correct, sir.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking about it's all water, hops, malt, and barley, right? It's the 4 German purity laws. We're going to go down that route.
The Reinheitsgebirge.
And then craft beer adds more stuff to it, right?
Sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah.
Necessarily?
Yeah.
Those are called adjuncts?
Every day is a learning day.
Nerd.
Okay, the fact or fiction, beer tastes better depending on who you're drinking it with.
Fiction.
You think?
I love that this question just obviously doesn't have an objectively true or false answer.
Yeah, it's not really a fact or fiction if I get questioned on my answer.
I find that my beer tastes better if I'm sitting next to a beautiful woman.
Yes.
I'm joking.
Adrian, the beer tastes better when I'm with you.
Oh, shout out to your wife.
Fact or fiction, pale ale is Mischa's favorite style of beer.
Fiction.
That's correct.
What is it, though? Double IPA?
IPAs, yeah.
Yeah.
IPAs encompass double IPAs and session IPAs. And, yeah, I mean, I'm a big sour beer fan. Guinness is probably my all-time favorite beer, so, Irish stouts. But yeah. Oh, that leads me to another good one. You've been to Ireland?
Yes.
Fact or fiction, Guinness tastes better in Ireland than anywhere else in the world.
Fact. Only because I don't really think I've drunk much Guinness outside of Ireland, to be honest, but I do remember when I was there, we drank a lot of Guinness.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I used to drink a lot of Guinness when I was living in Toronto, and there was this one little Irish pub where it was just old Irish guys sitting in the bar drinking Guinness all day, every day. And that was the best Guinness I ever had in Toronto because just the lines were so fresh. The beers were turning over so quickly. And then when I went to Ireland, everyone was like, oh, the best Guinness. And of course, it was better there in Ireland because literally everyone's drinking Guinness everywhere. But the fiction for me was that it tastes better at certain pubs in Ireland. It tasted the exact same everywhere. And it tasted great everywhere. But it we were in Belfast and someone was like, oh, you got to go to White's Tavern. It's the best pint of Guinness you'll ever have in your life. I was like, yeah, go to White's Tavern, oldest pub in Belfast. And the Guinness tasted great, but it tasted exactly the same as every other pub in Ireland that I went to.
I do remember the Guinness was, now you've mentioned it, the Guinness was amazing. That's all we drank the whole time we were there.
100%. Yeah. No time for gin and tonics.
No, at all. Don't waste your time with that.
I love Guinness.
Yes.
No, it's great. Like I'm a math guy, right? And I love that their contributions to math, via trying to refine the brewing process and inventing some very key formulas that you use in statistics out of their research into brewing beer, and the same at at Carlsberg with identifying these different types of yeast strains and being the first to run a PCR assay, separate out the different genomes and say there's differences between these lager strains. And both Guinness and Carlsberg have made these really cool contributions to just general science out of researching how to make beer. And for me, that's a really cool aspect of Guinness. Every time I think about Guinness, I think of the student's tea test, but it's great. That's a cool culture and spirit, that we are going to literally invent math to make our beer better. Well, invent a type of doing math, for the purpose of making better beer. That's pretty cool.
When I did a show at the Irish Sports Bar, Rabbit Hole Irish Sports Bar, and they had, your Nitro Irish Stout. And I was like, they don't even have Guinness here, but don't worry, they got the Nitro Irish Stout. It's better than Guinness anyway.
That's a bold claim.
I think it just kind of came out my mouth, I'm on stage. I think I said it's nearly as good as Guinness, if not better. Something like that. And then there's a group of Irish guys right in the front row, and they're like, oh. Yeah, I was like, all right, okay. Sorry, I had to backtrack my statement.
As a massive Guinness fan, I would never say that any Irish stout that we make would be better than Guinness.
I don't think I said better, but nearly as good.
It's a really good beer.
Yeah.
Neil, fact or fiction? Alex loves Guinness.
Fact.
Good work. Just seeing if he was listening.
That's true.
But not for the taste, for the maths.
And for the taste.
And for the taste.
The experience.
He tastes the maths as he's drinking
the experience. Let's go out on that. For the experience. For the craft.
Perfect.
Neil, thanks for stepping outside of your comfort zone and being the interviewee.
Thank you for having me. I love talking about beer. I know I could just keep talking about beer all day.
Obviously, you've edited a lot of podcasts where you were the host.
Mm-hmm.
Is it really normal to hear your own voice now, or does it still get inside your head when you're doing the editing?
I'm such a strange person. I don't mind the sound of my own voice at all.
You arrogant.
I know. I don't like saying it. It sounds like you're really arrogant because it's one of these things. Feel I don't like the sound of my own voice, and I'm like, it's just so normal to me too.
Yeah, I've done enough podcasts now recently that I'm used to hearing my voice.
Neil, thanks for being so awesome.
Thank you. I know. No, I'm kidding. Thank you for having me. I love talking about beer, and I'm excited that we're making this podcast.
All right, so this has been Beer Stories. Thank you to our guest, Neil Mackay. Check out his podcast as well. Thanks to Lewis Wright for our theme music. Thanks, as always, to my co-host, Alex Violet. And thank you for listening.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're like me, you may use your laptop at places where you have to use public Wi-Fi. This opens you up to digital snoopers. It's a massive problem. It can be your internet service provider, or you know who, looking at what you do online, or a cyber criminal trying to steal your bank passwords or credit card info, or even a hacker at the next table trying to steal your sensitive data. These days, it is vital that you keep your data safe. NordVPN keeps all of these snoopers away. It makes your internet activity private, protects you from accessing dangerous websites that are phishing for your data, and lets you enjoy your favorite content securely, even while away from home. And it's easy to use, even I could use it. I've actually been using NordVPN for years now here in Vietnam, and I'm excited to be an affiliate partner with them. I've used NordVPN to watch Netflix, BBC, Disney Plus with ease, and I also know that my information and data are safe from prying eyes, whoever they may be. Join now and you'll get 68% off and 3 months free when you go to my link, nordvpn.com/SMB. Just again, for those hard of hearing, nordvpn.com/SMB. The link is also in the show notes. I know nobody checks them out, but go check that out and you can get the link from wherever you're listening to this podcast. As an affiliate partner, it also means that I will get a small commission when you sign up, but at no extra cost to you. So not only will you be getting a great deal through 7 Million Bikes, you get a great VPN and you'll be supporting 7 Million Bikes podcast. Stay safe online and enjoy the shows you love. Any questions, just let me know. You know how to get in touch with me. And thanks for listening to this show. Cheers.